Have you ever contemplated what it might feel like to regain consciousness trapped inside another person's existence? To find yourself inhabiting a life that belongs to someone else entirely, where every single breath depends upon the capricious decisions of complete strangers? Tonight represents a journey into one of history's most secretive and treacherous worlds. In this realm, beauty functioned as the primary currency. Addiction became the mechanism for survival, and the concept of freedom seemed to exist only in distant fantasy. Gradually, your consciousness returns through layers of disorientation. The first sensation is music, distant, ethereal, drifting through paper-thin walls that separate this space from whatever activities unfold beyond. Your lungs burn from the thick smoke that permeates the air, carrying with it a peculiar sweetness that manages to penetrate everything it touches. As you attempt to shift your weight and sit upright, silken fabric produces a rustling sound against your skin, reminding you of something you can't quite grasp. The realization hits hard. You're wearing garments that don't belong to you. This room, with its unfamiliar furnishings and strange atmosphere, isn't your own, and the life surrounding you has been written by someone else's hand. Shanghai in 1895 becomes your geographical prison. Your role as a courtesan within one of the world's most infamous entertainment quarters becomes your social imprisonment. Within this notorious district where opium flows with the abundance of water, survival depends entirely on your capacity to manipulate your way through a labyrinth populated by wealthy merchants, ruthless gang members, and colonial officials who view you as nothing more than an exotic commodity to be acquired. Your surroundings reflect a carefully cultivated aesthetic designed to entice and intoxicate. Wooden screens carved with intricate patterns divide the space. Delicate porcelain vases sit positioned at strategic locations. Multiple red silk lanterns hang throughout the room, casting everything in tones of amber and gold. Yet something about these dancing shadows unsettles you deeply. The bed itself consists of a low platform, its surface covered with embroidered cushions in rich fabrics. Positioned nearby, a lacquered table holds items that immediately identify the nature of this establishment. An ornate opium pipe alongside several small jade containers. As your vision gradually sharpens and clarifies, you become aware of sounds emanating from beyond your door. Laughter echoes through the corridors, though something about its quality suggests it's being performed rather than genuinely felt. Conversations occur simultaneously in multiple languages, their voices blending together in a linguistic stew. Beneath these varied sounds runs a constant, almost rhythmic whisper, silk slippers making their way across wooden floorboards in what appears to be endless movement. This location has a name, the House of Golden Butterflies. It stands among Shanghai's most exclusive pleasure establishments, a place where affluent individuals come to temporarily abandon their ordinary existence and surrender themselves to fantasies constructed from smoke and artfully arranged bodies. The economics of such places depend entirely on the careful management of desire, the strategic rationing of intimacy, and the manipulation of men who believe they're purchasing freedom when they're actually renting an elaborate illusion. Your memories, however, refuse to organize themselves into any coherent narrative. When you attempt to recall how you arrived here, what events preceded your awakening, or who you were before this moment, the memories scatter like frightened birds. Fragmentary images flash through your consciousness, faces that nearly crystallize before dissolving, locations that almost become familiar, conversations that evaporate before you can grasp their meaning. It feels precisely like trying to recall a dream after waking. Certain images retain vivid intensity, yet their context and chronology remain frustratingly opaque. The only certainty you possess is the knowledge that you're trapped, not simply confined to this room or even this building, but imprisoned by a complex system of obligations you never agreed to undertake. Debts accrue constantly, their accumulation seemingly designed to guarantee perpetual servitude. Rules govern every aspect of your existence, regulations you had no voice in establishing, yet must navigate with meticulous precision. The door slides open with minimal sound, announcing the arrival of another presence in your confined space. An older woman enters. Her name is Mother Chen, and she exercises dominion over this establishment with a grip that simultaneously manages to appear gentle on its surface while remaining fundamentally uncompromising. Her clothing speaks of wealth, expensive robes in deep crimson tones, elaborate styling that incorporates gold pins and jade ornaments throughout. Her face has been painted in traditional style, white powder creating a porcelain appearance, bright red lips creating sharp definition, and eyebrows shaped according to fashionable aesthetics. But her eyes betray the true nature of her power. They observe everything with calculating precision, missing no detail, no hesitation, no moment of authentic emotion that might indicate resistance or unreliability in those under her authority. She addresses you directly in Mandarin, her voice carrying the absolute authority of someone accustomed to instantaneous obedience without question or negotiation. "You must prepare yourself," she announces, her tone brooking no possibility of refusal. A client arrives within the hour. This particular client has made a specific request for your companionship throughout the evening. The client's name, Master Harrison, produces an involuntary response in your body, whether from fear, recognition, or some deeper intuition you cannot determine. This British textile merchant has accumulated considerable wealth through his business activities in Shanghai's port. He imports silk and cotton in massive quantities, operations that have rendered him genuinely wealthy by any standard. However, his reputation extends beyond simple commercial success. He's known throughout Shanghai's social circles for possessing highly specific preferences, and more troublingly, for responding with violent intensity when his expectations fail to materialize. Mother Chen demonstrates remarkable efficiency as she approaches the small table and begins the practiced ritual of opium preparation. The black substance, resembling thick tar in consistency, responds to the application of heat by producing audible bubbling sounds and releasing aromatic vapors that grow progressively more intense and nauseating. She instructs you regarding the evening's requirements with the practicality of someone who has managed these arrangements countless times. "You will consume opium alongside him," she explains, her words carrying both instruction and subtle threat. However, you must maintain sufficient mental clarity to ensure his satisfaction remains paramount. This establishment cannot afford to lose a client of Harrison's financial significance and social standing. Your desire to refuse crystallizes within you. Your instinct to rebel against this predetermined fate becomes almost overwhelming. But you understand with perfect clarity what such resistance would cost you. The house of golden butterflies functions through a deliberately constructed mechanism of debt and dependency. Every meal you consume, every silk garment draped across your shoulders, every stick of incense burned to perfume your room, each of these items incrementally increases what you supposedly owe. The opium keeps your capacity for resistance diminished. The debts ensure your continued captivity, and the ever-present threat of violence maintains your obedience through fear. After Mother Chen departs to attend to other preparations, you commence the elaborate process of personal transformation. Your wardrobe consists entirely of silk robes and jewel tones, each individual piece likely worth more than most ordinary people could earn across an entire year of labor. Tonight, you select an emerald green robe featuring golden phoenixes embroidered in exquisite detail. In the flickering lamplight, these birds appear to possess genuine life and movement. The makeup process demands considerable time and technical skill. You apply white face powder with practiced strokes, creating a mask that effectively transforms your natural features into something ethereal and otherworldly. Red pigment defines your lips with sharp precision. Dark color circles your eyes. Delicate patterns painted onto your forehead complete the metamorphosis. When you examine your reflection, the person gazing back seems almost unrecognizable. A beautiful stranger manufactured through cosmetic artistry. Your hair requires arrangement into an intricate style that will complement your clothing selection while simultaneously appealing to your client's aesthetic preferences. Wooden combs and jade pins become your tools as you craft an elaborate structure requiring nearly an hour of meticulous work. Within Shanghai's pleasure quarters, every aspect of such styling carries embedded meaning. The arrangement signals your status. The specific design indicates your availability. The overall presentation announces the establishment you belong to. The main parlor's sounds intensify as evening approaches your floor. You can hear masculine voices speaking in English, French, and Mandarin, their conversations becoming increasingly boisterous as wine and opium begin their work on judgment and inhibition. The House of Golden Butterflies caters deliberately to Shanghai's international population, creating an environment where Eastern traditions merge with Western decadence in ways that would be considered absolutely scandalous in either culture's home society. A gentle knock interrupts your elaborate preparations. A young servant, barely reaching 16 years of age, enters with her eyes deliberately cast downward in practiced deference. She carries a message. The client has arrived and requests your immediate presence in the Jade Room, Shanghai's most luxurious private chamber, traditionally reserved exclusively for the wealthiest patrons. As you navigate through the establishment's narrow corridors toward your destination, you encounter evidence of the evening's activities occurring throughout the building. Behind translucent paper screens, shadows move in intimate configurations. Whispered conversations in unfamiliar languages drift from multiple rooms. The persistent aroma of opium smoke permeates every space and surface, creating an atmosphere thick with chemical intoxication. The main parlor assaults your senses from multiple directions simultaneously. The space has been deliberately designed to overwhelm visitors with its lavish opulence. Carved wooden furniture inlaid with mother-of-pearl gleams brilliantly beneath dozens of suspended lanterns. Silk tapestries depicting classical Chinese literary scenes cover the walls. Incense burners throughout the space produce exotic fragrances that combine into a complex olfactory experience. Musicians in the corner play traditional instruments, their melodies intricately weaving through conversations and laughter. You traverse this crowded space with careful attention to propriety and grace. Each pairing, visible throughout the room, represents a complex negotiation between desire, financial resources, and power dynamics. Some men are clearly recent arrivals in Shanghai. Their eyes widen with wonder and anxiety as they attempt to comprehend customs and social expectations that seem bewilderingly foreign. Other regulars move with confident familiarity, obviously knowing precisely what they want and exactly how to obtain it within this carefully structured environment. Master Harrison occupies a position of obvious prominence, a large cushioned chair positioned to provide comprehensive views of the entire parlor below. He presents as a man in his 50s, dressed in European fashion, but incorporating elements that betray his extended residence in China. His jacket consists of Chinese silk. His pocket watch hangs from jade-carved chainwork. His fingers display multiple rings combining both Western and Eastern design traditions. Upon observing your approach, his expression transforms into what appears to be a smile, though something about the expression fails to reach his eyes with genuine warmth. He addresses you in Mandarin, though his accent clearly identifies him as a native English speaker. Your appearance this evening strikes him as absolutely radiant, he announces, rising slightly to offer a shallow bow. The greeting ritual requires careful execution, having been drilled into your consciousness since your arrival at this establishment. You lower your eyes with practiced demureness. You execute a graceful bow. You recite welcome words that have been memorized through repetition until they emerge without conscious thought. Every movement, every word selection, every minute adjustment of your facial expression has been carefully calculated to appeal and entice. You speak softly, your voice modulated into melodious tones. This humble servant feels genuinely honored by the esteemed client's distinguished presence. You offer, in the traditional phrases you've been trained to produce, "How might I serve this honored gentleman?" throughout the evening. He gestures toward the jade room, and you respond by leading the way, acutely aware that dozens of eyes monitor your every movement. Within this competitive environment, reputation functions as everything. A single misstep could result in punishment severe enough to serve as a warning example to others who might consider similar errors. The jade room achieves illumination through colored glass lanterns, their hues creating a dreamlike atmosphere throughout the space. Low tables display elaborate tea services, plates of delicate sweet preparations, and, of course, the inevitable opium pipes alongside their associated accessories. Cushions arranged throughout create intimate seating configurations. Screens decorated with erotic imagery simultaneously provide both ornamentation and subtle suggestion regarding the evening's eventual direction. Master Harrison settles himself comfortably, then pats the cushion adjacent to his position, indicating precisely where you should position yourself. What follows will proceed according to familiar patterns, you understand? Conversation will commence. Tea service may be offered. Musical performance or poetry recitation might occur. Gradually, as opium takes increasing effect on his judgment and consciousness, the interactions will grow progressively intimate. Your essential function remains constant throughout, embodying whatever fantasy he desires, a living construction from silk and artifice designed to transport him away from harsh colonial business realities into a world constructed entirely from smoke, sensuality, and carefully orchestrated pleasure. Yet something about this particular evening feels distinctly different from previous encounters. Tension seems to permeate the air itself. Conversations between house staff halt abruptly whenever you approach. Glances exchanged between employees suggest secrets being deliberately withheld. An intuition born from months of careful observation warns you that tonight will deviate significantly from established patterns. The opium pipe receives preparation with ceremonial care, the ritualistic aspects proving nearly as important as the drug's chemical effects. Master Harrison watches with obvious anticipation as you heat the precious substance and readied it for consumption. The first taste carries intense burning sensation, coating your throat with bittersweet chemical residue before familiar numbness begins spreading through your body's tissue and neural pathways. As the drug takes effect, the entire world gradually acquires a hazy quality that renders everything softer, less sharp, more dreamlike. Master Harrison inhales deeply from his own pipe, his eyes beginning to display the characteristic glaze indicating opium's influence on his consciousness. Tonight, however, you consciously take smaller doses, deliberately maintaining mental sharpness beyond your usual state. Something about the evening's atmosphere demands heightened alertness, rather than chemically induced compliance. Conversation initiates with his customary inquiry about your dreams and interior fantasies. This represents how these encounters always begin, discussions that dance around genuine reality while simultaneously plunging into elaborate fantasy constructions. You've learned through experience that Western men, particularly those separated from their home countries, crave these invented, intimate moments nearly as intensely as they desire physical contact. You begin generating one of your carefully perfected narratives. Your story features childhood memories in a village that may or may not have actually existed. You describe dreams of traveling beyond Shanghai's confining walls into territories both geographically and imaginatively distant. You construct romantic notions that feed his psychological need to perceive you as something more substantial than what the arrangement actually makes you. But as you spin these tales, you detect movement in the shadows beyond the room's decorative screen. Someone is positioned there, watching, listening, waiting for something. The tea ceremony provides welcome interruption. Your hands move with grace refined through endless repetition, measuring tea leaves with precision, heating water to exactly the correct temperature, pouring with movements elevated to genuine artistry through practice and training. Every gesture reinforces the exotic fantasy that wealthy foreigners willingly pay substantial sums to experience. "You flow like water," Harrison murmurs, reaching out to trace his finger along your wrist. His touch conveys possession and ownership, claiming you in a way you've learned to conceal your true revulsion toward through carefully constructed performance. He compares you favorably to women from his homeland, Manchester, he mentions, describing you as distinctly different, somehow more graceful, somehow more mysterious than those distant companions. This represents the essential game you've mastered, convincing him that his attention constitutes genuine honor rather than commercial transaction, that your responses emerge from authentic feeling rather than precisely rehearsed performance. You've observed other courtesans who failed to maintain this necessary fiction, who allowed their genuine emotions to surface at inappropriate moments. Such lapses result in quiet disappearances during nighttime hours, debts transferred to less prestigious establishments, or worse fates you prefer not to contemplate. The opium gradually asserts its familiar influence over his mental processes. His conversation becomes increasingly rambling, progressively philosophical, rather than immediately physical. He discusses his business dealings, the fortunes being generated in Shanghai's rapidly expanding foreign commercial district, the opportunities available for those bold enough to seize them without hesitation or moral consideration. You listen with convincing fascination, simultaneously filing away information that might eventually prove useful for purposes beyond the present encounter. He asks what you love most about Shanghai, his words now noticeably slurred by chemical influence. The city permits individuals to become whoever they wish to become, he explains, his voice taking on the intensity of genuine revelation. Traditional rules and expectations lose their constraining power. Money supersedes lineage. Opportunity remains indifferent to accent or educational pedigree. You nod and smile while steadily maintaining his teacup, but his words generate genuine unease within you. Shanghai's fusion of Eastern and Western traditions has indeed created unprecedented opportunities. Yet, new systems of exploitation have emerged to replace traditional ones. You exist as living evidence that these opportunities frequently come at someone else's considerable expense. The music from the main parlor continues drifting through walls, mingling with sounds of rain beginning its steady percussion against windows. Autumn storms arrive regularly in Shanghai, and tonight's particular weather seems to mirror the strange tension you've been experiencing throughout the evening. Lightning occasionally illuminates the room in stark white brightness, rendering everything momentarily surreal and disorienting. As evening progresses, Harrison's hands become increasingly exploratory, and you respond with practiced sensuality, drilled into you through months of systematic training and accumulated experience. Yet a portion of your consciousness remains alert, observing, anticipating whatever disruption your intuition insists approaches. He announces that he possesses something special for this particular evening, reaching into his jacket and producing a small silk pouch handled with reverence typically reserved for the finest quality opium. This substance, originating from a Hong Kong contact, surpasses anything you've previously encountered in potency and purity. He reveals the contents with obvious anticipation. The substance differs dramatically from typical opium's black tar appearance. This material displays crystalline structure, nearly white in coloration, and emits an acrid aroma that burns your nasal passages intensely. You've overheard whispers regarding new compounds arriving from Western pharmaceutical laboratories, chemical creations promising euphoric experiences exceeding anything traditional opium can deliver. But rumors also speak of withdrawal symptoms that render standard opium addiction seem almost manageable by comparison. Your instinctive response expresses hesitation. But Harrison's expression transforms instantaneously. The dreamy smile evaporates, replaced by something fundamentally cold and calculatingly dangerous. This shift reminds you precisely what kind of individual you're actually entertaining. His response brooks no possibility of further discussion or refusal. He asserts firmly that he's invested considerable financial resources into securing your companionship this evening, and consequently, he expects full participation in every experience he intends to provide. Surely, he adds, a sophisticated woman like yourself wouldn't exhibit fear regarding simple adventurous activity. The implicit threat in his words remains unmistakable. Refusal would constitute rejection, and rejection from a client of Harrison's prominence and resources would trigger consequences you genuinely cannot afford. Mother Chen has made abundantly clear that maintaining the establishment's reputation depends entirely upon absolute compliance with client requests, regardless of how dangerous, degrading, or fundamentally objectionable those requests might prove. You watch as he prepares the strange substance using equipment that resembles scientific apparatus rather than traditional drug paraphernalia. A glass pipe, a different type of heating flame, precise measurements that demonstrate Western pharmaceutical knowledge rather than Eastern herbal tradition. The entire ritual feels wrong, too clinical, too removed from ancient traditions that at least provided cultural context for opium consumption and use. As you lift the pipe to your lips, chaos erupts in the parlor below. Shouts in Chinese and English mix with running footsteps and violently slamming doors. Harrison freezes instantly, his earlier chemical haze replaced by sharp alertness. The commotion in the adjacent space demands immediate attention, but before he can investigate, your door slides open with dramatic violence. Mother Chen stands in the doorway, her usual flawless composure completely shattered. Perspiration streaks her white face powder. Her elaborate hairstyle has become disheveled. Her eyes display terror you've never witnessed before in her typically controlled demeanor. All clients must evacuate immediately, she announces in English, her voice barely maintaining control. An incident has occurred, she explains further. The authorities are arriving. Multiple authorities, foreign police, Chinese officials, military personnel. Her words are interrupted by her obvious distress. Someone important has been murdered. Someone genuinely significant. Now they're systematically searching all the pleasure establishments, questioning every person present. The blood drains from Harrison's face completely. His physical response suggests knowledge of something far more serious than conventional evening entertainment or standard sexual transactions. His reaction indicates awareness of much larger and more dangerous circumstances. Mother Chen addresses you specifically, instructing you to pack only what's absolutely essential. All girls must be prepared for rapid departure within minutes at most. The protection agreements that normally safeguard the establishment may prove insufficient under these extraordinary circumstances. Through the windows, you can observe lanterns moving in the street below, official lanterns carried by uniformed men conducting systematic building searches. The sound of splintering wood suggests that doors are being broken down when cooperative entry cannot be achieved efficiently. Harrison is already gathering his belongings with movements that display surprising agility for someone who should be profoundly intoxicated. The dreamy merchant reclined on silk cushions moments earlier has vanished entirely, replaced by someone clearly experienced with navigating dangerous situations and escape procedures. He mutters something about the back exit, mentioning the garden and river beyond. But before he can depart, you notice something that freezes your blood completely. The silk pouch containing that strange white powder has fallen from his jacket onto the floor, and scattered across the carpet are items far more significant than simple recreational drugs, official documents bearing government seals. These papers, written in what appears to be coded language, reveal their importance through formatting and official markings alone. The evening's puzzle pieces suddenly achieve crystallization. Harrison's unusual nervousness, the mysterious drug, the precisely timed visit. These official documents, the complete picture becomes suddenly clear. You're not simply entertaining a client. You're witnessing something immensely more dangerous. Espionage, potentially. Possibly drug trafficking. Potentially something worse still. The sound of boots against wooden floors grows progressively closer. Multiple male voices shouting orders in various languages echo through the building's corridors. The usual protection that the House of Golden Butterflies enjoys from local authorities has clearly been withdrawn tonight. The bribes and arrangements that normally permit such establishments to operate unmolested have suddenly become worthless. Mother Chin reappears, this time accompanied by two of the establishment's male guards. "Everyone must depart immediately," she commands. "Use the tunnel system. Head for safe houses in the French Quarter." Your previous understanding of these underground passages, fragments overheard from whispered conversations among other courtesans, suddenly becomes immediately relevant to your survival. You'd heard vague references to subterranean passages connecting various entertainment establishments, emergency escape routes deliberately constructed for precisely these circumstances. You'd never imagined actually requiring these routes. You'd never contemplated the carefully constructed world above collapsing with such sudden and complete totality. Part 2. The Theft and Escape. As you rapidly gather the few possessions genuinely mattering to your survival, your consciousness races through multiple competing scenarios. This chaos could represent the opportunity you've been waiting for, the chance to finally escape the debts and obligations imprisoning you. Within the confusion of whatever investigation is unfolding, records might be destroyed, debts might be forgotten. A sufficiently clever individual might manage to disappear entirely. But escape also requires venturing into Shanghai nights filled with dangers you haven't previously encountered. You'd be exchanging familiar horrors for uncertainties potentially far worse. The world existing outside pleasure house walls remains fundamentally unkind to women alone, particularly women visibly marked as courtesans through their distinctive presentation and bearing. Harrison pushes past your position toward the door, then stops abruptly upon realizing the compromising documents remain scattered across the floor. His eyes meet yours directly. In that moment, mutual understanding crystallizes between you. You possess knowledge that becomes dangerous to him. You've seen these papers. You've witnessed his panic. You've observed his familiarity with escape procedures, suggesting this situation isn't entirely unfamiliar to him. The sound of splintering wood intensifies as authorities reach your floor. Voices in the corridor indicate they're nearly upon you. Time for careful deliberation has evaporated. Whatever decision you make in the following seconds will determine whether you survive this night and whether you remain trapped in this existence or discover some pathway toward something genuinely different. The choice crystallizes with sudden clarity. You snatch one of the scattered documents before Harrison can prevent it. You tuck the paper into your robe's folds while moving rapidly toward the hidden panel Mother Chin is frantically opening. Behind a carved wooden cabinet, darkness beckons from a passage whose narrow dimensions barely accommodate a single person's width. Rough stone walls suggest construction significantly older than the elegant pleasure house above. Harrison lunges toward you desperately, his face twisted by desperation, but the sound of official boots in the corridor freezes him completely. The authorities are now too close. He must choose between pursuing you and securing his own escape. Self-preservation prevails, and he disappears through an alternative exit as uniformed men burst into the Jade Room. You slip into the tunnel system as the first official figures cross your room's threshold. The passage extends into complete darkness, forcing you to navigate by touch along damp stone walls while attempting to move silently despite silk slippers completely unsuited for underground exploration. The air feels stale and thick, carrying accumulated scents of mold and decades of hidden activities. Other figures move through the darkness surrounding you. Whispered conversations in multiple dialects echo against tunnel walls as courtesans, clients, and house staff flee through various passage branches. Some tunnels connect to other pleasure establishments. Others lead toward private residences where wealthy patrons maintain discreet apartments. Still others extend directly toward the docks, where boats await those requiring rapid water escape. The tunnel you've chosen slopes consistently downward, and the sound of running water grows louder with each advancing step. You're heading toward the Hangpu River, following ancient escape routes that probably served fugitives for centuries, before these passages were repurposed for contemporary needs. The document hidden in your robe feels like it's producing heat against your skin, a constant physical reminder that you now carry secrets potentially proving either invaluable or absolutely fatal, depending entirely on content and who's seeking it. After what seems like hours but probably constitutes only minutes, you emerge through a concealed entrance into a storage building positioned near Shanghai's waterfront. The rain has intensified significantly, transforming unpaved streets into rivers of mud that will substantially impede tracking efforts. Lightning illuminates the transformed landscape in dramatic flashes, revealing a world changed from elegant opium parlor into something far more primitive and genuinely dangerous. Shanghai's foreign quarter extends before you, a complex labyrinth of warehouses, commercial shipping offices, and cramped residential buildings where various nationalities cluster together in precarious proximity. British merchants coexist alongside American traders. French diplomats occupy neighborhoods shared with German industrialists. Everyone maintains the careful equilibrium of simultaneous cooperation and competition that characterizes colonial commerce. But tonight, this delicate balance has shattered completely. Military patrols move through streets in organized formations, their lanterns cutting through darkness as they conduct systematic searches of every structure. The quarter's usual nighttime activities have been suspended, replaced by an atmosphere approximating martial law, suggesting that tonight's incident transcends simple criminal activity. You require shelter immediately. You need clothing that won't immediately identify you as a courtesan. Most critically, You must understand what the document you've stolen actually contains. The paper could prove worthless or valuable enough to purchase your liberation from the debts and dependencies defining your existence. But first, you must survive until daylight. The safe house Mother Chen mentioned exists somewhere in the French Quarter, but reaching it requires crossing several miles of patrolled streets while wearing clothing that announces your profession to anyone observing you. Your elaborate hairstyle, distinctive makeup, and silk robes function as a uniform, more effective than any official badge. A group of drunken sailors emerges from a late-night tavern, their voices loud and aggressively masculine in ways alcohol produces when men feel separated from home and surrounded by people they consider inferior. They notice you immediately, their conversation shifting from shipping complaints to crude speculation regarding your availability and pricing. They call out to you in English, their accent identifying them as Australian or South African. "A little butterfly got caught in the rain," one of them announces, his tone already transitioning toward predatory intent. You understand sufficient English to recognize the immediate danger you face, yet running would only amplify their aggressive attention and potentially attract official notice. Instead, you lower your eyes and attempt to disappear into shadows near a doorway, hoping they'll lose interest and continue their journey. But alcohol combined with opportunity has emboldened them considerably, and they begin moving deliberately in your direction. The arrival of approaching hoofbeats suddenly alters the situation, though not in reassuring ways. A patrol of mounted police rounds the corner, their uniforms identifying them as International Settlement Mixed Force personnel. The sailors scatter immediately, understanding the importance of avoiding official attention while engaged in activities potentially violating public order regulations. But the patrol's attention now focuses directly on you. A British sergeant with weathered features indicating years in colonial service dismounts and approaches with casual authority, characteristic of someone accustomed to unquestioned obedience. He speaks to you in Mandarin, his heavily accented speech betraying familiarity with Shanghai's entertainment districts. "You're conducting evening activities rather late for your profession," he observes, his tone suggesting genuine knowledge of pleasure house operations. "Shouldn't you be safely secured within the establishment employing you?" His question carries multiple layers of threat. He's offering you opportunity to explain yourself, but his hand rests casually on his weapon. His men have positioned themselves to prevent any escape attempt. Your response will determine whether you're escorted back to whatever remains of the golden butterflies, taken to detention facilities for questioning, or potentially worse. This humble servant became separated from her companions during tonight's disturbance, you reply, employing formal speech patterns marking educated courtesans. You seek only safe passage home. The sergeant examines your face in lamplight, his observation clearly processing numerous details your appearance communicates. Your makeup, though smeared by rain and physical exertion, displays exceptional quality. Your robes, despite mud and soaking, clearly cost considerable money. Everything about your presentation suggests association with high-end establishments serving wealthy foreign clients, rather than common entertainment for local working men. "Home," he repeats thoughtfully, clearly skeptical about your answer. Where precisely might that home location be? This moment constitutes a crucial decision point. You might attempt returning to the pleasure district, assuming any establishments remain operational after tonight's raids. You could claim association with one of the foreign compounds, hoping your appearance and language abilities might render your deception believable. Alternatively, you could offer truth and hope. Honesty produces unexpected mercy. Before you can respond, commotion erupts from the waterfront direction. Shouts in Chinese and English mix with gunfire, suggesting someone has been caught attempting escape via boat. The patrol's attention shifts immediately toward this new crisis. The sergeant remounts his horse with professional efficiency. He warns you to remain off the streets tonight before spurring his mount toward the disturbance. The brief encounter has clarified something crucial about your situation. Survival demands more than simply avoiding official search parties. Shanghai's entire social structure operates according to clearly defined roles and precise expectations. Anyone failing to conform to these patterns automatically becomes suspicious. A courtesan belongs in an entertainment house serving clients under establishment owner protection and control. A courtesan wandering alone through streets at night represents either escaped property or evidence of larger systemic disruption. Either way, authorities feel compelled to resolve such situations, usually in ways proving distinctly unhelpful to the woman involved. Part 3. The underground labyrinth, the French Quarter, offers your best possibility for temporary shelter. But reaching it requires navigating areas where different national jurisdictions create overlapping authority and frequently conflicting legal systems. What appears perfectly legal in British settlements might constitute criminal activity in French concessions. Chinese authorities might ignore actions that provoke immediate foreign police response. You begin moving through the back street maze, remaining close to walls and doorways, providing concealment from both patrols and occasional groups of men conducting searches for reasons you can only speculate about. The document in your robe feels progressively heavier with each step, as though the secrets it contains are somehow adding physical mass to your already difficult journey. The rain continues its steady downpour, converting unpaved roads into treacherous channels of mud that make silent movement nearly impossible. Your silk slippers, designed exclusively for polished wooden indoor floors, offer absolutely no protection against Shanghai's harsh street realities. Each step becomes a careful balance between moving quickly and maintaining sufficient stealth for avoiding detection. As you navigate through darkness, fragments of conversation drift from windows and doorways. Multiple languages blend together in a linguistic symphony reflecting Shanghai's genuinely international character. English merchants complain about disrupted business schedules. French diplomats debate political implications of tonight's incident. German industrialists worry about manufacturing operation impacts. Chinese voices, when audible clearly, discuss changes approaching the city that will affect everyone's circumstances. Shanghai's foreign settlements exist in strange legal ambiguity. Treaties and international agreements create pockets of extraterritorial jurisdiction within Chinese territory. Foreign nationals accused of crimes face trial in their own national courts under their own legal systems. Chinese citizens accused of crimes against foreigners encounter entirely different justice systems. Tonight's raids suggest this carefully balanced arrangement exists under substantial stress, possibly experiencing complete breakdown. You encounter a crossroads where 4 different streets meet, each leading toward distinctly different national quarters. British flags mark territory to the east. French tricolor banners indicate western areas. German commercial signage points northward toward industrial districts. Southern routes lead back toward Chinese city areas where traditional authority maintains predominant influence, though such locations present different but equally serious dangers for a woman in your condition. The choice of direction will determine much more than immediate destination. Each quarter offers different opportunities and hazards, different types of people who might help or harm you, and different possible futures if you somehow survive this night. A figure emerges from shadows near a shuttered shop, moving with careful silence characteristic of someone trained in navigating dangerous streets without attracting unwanted attention. As this person approaches, you recognize their silhouette's distinctive profile. Another courtesan. Their elaborate hairstyle and silk robes identify them as clearly as your own presentation identifies you. The woman introduces herself as Jade Lotus, using the formal greeting courtesans employ when addressing each other. She asks if you're also fleeing from the golden butterflies. You nod cautiously, uncertain whether this encounter represents salvation or additional danger. Other courtesans could function as allies in such situations, sharing information and resources that might help everyone survive. But they could also be competitors for limited safe havens, or worse, potentially working with authorities or criminal organizations profiting from the chaos. She shares additional information about her escape. She got out through the kitchen when soldiers arrived at the establishment. She asks if you understand what the authorities were searching for, her question carrying weight beyond simple curiosity. If the raids targeted specific individuals or activities, that information could determine which escape routes remain viable and which city areas genuinely offer safety. But sharing your knowledge about Harrison's documents and mysterious powder could simultaneously make you a target for people preferring witnesses to remain permanently silent. You respond carefully, repeating Mother Chen's basic explanation about someone important being murdered without adding your own observations regarding Harrison's suspicious behavior. You mention authorities systematically searching pleasure establishments. Jade Lotus nods with grim understanding, acknowledging that typical raids usually target specific individuals or aim to collect regular payments. Tonight's operation feels distinctly different. The authorities appear to be searching for something specific rather than just conducting routine enforcement activities. Her observation matches your own sense that tonight transcends typical law enforcement or periodic moral reform crackdowns. When she asks where you're heading, you face another decision determining both immediate safety and long-term possibilities. Traveling together would provide mutual protection and shared resources, but it would also mean trusting someone whose motives and loyalties remain fundamentally unknown. In a world where survival frequently depends on betraying others before they betray you, partnership becomes dangerous gambling. But as another patrol approaches from the direction you'd been planning to traverse, the decision becomes simpler. Two women traveling together might attract different attention than a lone courtesan wandering streets alone. And Jade Lotus clearly possesses her own detailed knowledge of Shanghai's hidden geography that could complement your understanding of the city's power structures and social hierarchies. "The French Quarter," you whisper back. "There are safe houses there, establishments where questions remain unasked as long as appropriate payment is provided. She smiles grimly and gestures toward a narrow alley, leading away from the approaching patrol. She knows a route, avoiding main checkpoints, but the journey requires swift movement and mutual trust. Trust seems almost quaint in a world constructed from deception, manipulation, and exploitation. Yet, as official voices grow closer and alternatives become increasingly limited, trust becomes less an actual choice than an absolute necessity. You follow Jade Lotus into darkness, carrying secrets potentially worth fortunes or guaranteeing your death, depending entirely on future events and human choices. You're heading toward uncertain futures that represent your first genuine, autonomous decision in months or possibly years. The night extends far beyond its conclusion, and Shanghai's streets harbor dangers you haven't previously imagined. But for the first time since waking in that opium-scented room, you're actively moving toward something rather than simply fleeing desperately from everything. The document hidden in your robe pulses with possibility. The woman leading you through shadowed back streets represents your first genuine human connection in this strange existence. Whatever comes next, you're no longer facing it completely alone. Jade Lotus leads you through a labyrinth of narrow passages between buildings. Her movements remain quick and confident, despite the treacherous conditions underfoot. The rain has transformed packed earth into slippery mud, threatening to send you sprawling with each careless step. Your inadequate shoes make every movement precarious. The morning sun hasn't yet appeared, and your silk slippers offer zero grip on surfaces, becoming progressively more treacherous. She whispers instructions to stay close, pausing periodically at building corners to check for patrol activity. She explains that French guards change shifts in approximately 10 minutes. If you time your crossing correctly, you can slip past their checkpoint during the transition when they're distracted by handover procedures. Her detailed knowledge of patrol schedules suggests extensive experience with escapes precisely like this, prompting speculation about what circumstances had taught her such specialized information about Shanghai's security arrangements. But questions must wait. The immediate priority involves reaching whatever sanctuary the French Quarter might provide before your accumulated luck finally exhausts itself. Part 4. Sanctuary and Secrets. The alley opens onto a wider street lined with European-style buildings housing various commercial enterprises serving the foreign community. Even at this advanced hour, some establishments remain active, their illuminated windows creating visibility pools you must carefully circumvent. A German beer hall reverberates with late-night celebration sounds. A British banking office displays unusual activity, suggesting tonight's crisis extends far beyond pleasure district boundaries into mainstream commercial operations. Jade Lotus suddenly grabs your arm, pulling you into a darkened doorway of a closed shop. A group of men in civilian clothing moves past on the opposite street side. Their purposeful stride and alert postures mark them unmistakably as plainclothes investigators rather than ordinary citizens. Each man carries himself with bearing characteristic of people accustomed to authority, and their coordinated movements suggest professional training extending beyond routine police work. Secret police. She breathes into your ear. Both Chinese and foreign, she continues barely audibly above the rain sound. This situation has transformed into something substantially bigger than simple murder investigation. The implications generate genuine chill through your body, having nothing to do with rain-soaked clothing. Secret police involvement suggests political dimensions to whatever has triggered tonight's raids, connections to espionage, possible international incidents, or threats to the delicate balance maintaining Shanghai's foreign settlements functionality. The document hidden in your robe suddenly feels even more genuinely dangerous. A potential death sentence if it contains information the wrong people desperately want suppressed. After the investigators disappear around a corner, you continue navigating the street and alley maze. The architecture begins shifting noticeably as you progress into areas displaying stronger French influence. Buildings incorporate Parisian design elements adapted to Shanghai's climate conditions. Covered walkways and ornate ironwork speak to European aesthetics imposed upon Chinese geography. Music drifts from an establishment ahead, a piano producing melancholy melodies perfectly suited to the rain-soaked night. As you approach closer, you recognize it as a small cafe catering specifically to French expatriates. Artists, journalists, and political refugees gather in such places to discuss literature, philosophy, and colonial life's complex realities. That's where we're heading, Jade Lotus indicates. Madame Dubois operates a boarding house on the establishment's upper floors. She asks no questions and accepts payment in numerous forms. Many of the courtesans have previously used her services when situations became complicated. The cafe's windows reveal warm, inviting interiors, contrasting sharply with the chaos transforming the rest of the quarter into something resembling war zones. Patrons sit at small tables, engaging in animated conversation over wine and coffee, appearing genuinely oblivious to military activities, converting the broader streets into virtual war zones. The scene seems almost impossibly normal, making you wonder whether you've somehow stumbled into a completely different reality. However, careful observation reveals subtle indicators suggesting the cafe's inhabitants maintain far more awareness of current events than their apparent nonchalance suggests. Conversations pause when strangers pass the windows. Several men keep hats deliberately pulled low over their faces. More than one woman appears to be watching the streets with unusual attentiveness for such advanced hour. This represents the type of location where people come when they need temporary disappearance, when normal commercial and communication channels become too dangerous for continued use. Jade Lotus approaches the cafe's side entrance with familiar confidence, tapping the glass in a specific pattern that obviously functions as recognition signal. After a moment, the door opens to reveal a middle-aged French woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, quickly assessing both of your appearances. She speaks in French initially, then switches to accented Mandarin. "Two butterflies caught in the storm," she observes quietly. "Come rapidly before someone notices you standing outside." Madame Dubois ushers you through a narrow hallway passing the establishment's main room toward a staircase positioned at the building's rear. You catch glimpses of patrons as you pass, noting the nationality mixture and social class variety, suggesting this location serves as neutral ground for people from numerous different backgrounds. The staircase leads to multiple small rooms on upper building floors, each furnished simply but comfortably with basic residence necessities. Madame Dubois opens a door revealing two narrow beds, a wash basin, and a small table with chairs. The accommodations are decidedly modest compared to flower house luxury, but they represent something precious you haven't experienced in months: genuine privacy and relative safety. She lights a small oil lamp casting warm shadows across plain walls. "You may remain here throughout this evening," she announces in her Mandarin mixture. "Payment can be discussed tomorrow morning when circumstances become clearer. For now, you should rest and clean yourselves. There are clothes in the wardrobe that will make you significantly less conspicuous when you eventually venture outside again." She pauses at the doorway, studying your faces with the calculating expression of someone who has learned to read people's situations quickly and accurately. "Whatever troubles have brought you here, remaining inside until current difficulties pass would be genuinely wise," she advises. "The authorities are conducting particularly thorough searches tonight." After she leaves, you and Jade Lotus stand in the small room, suddenly experiencing safety for the first time since chaos commenced. The realization brings both enormous relief and profound uncertainty about what comes next. You're no longer running desperately through dangerous streets, but you're also no longer following familiar routines that had defined your existence for months. Jade Lotus approaches the wash basin and begins removing her elaborate makeup, transforming herself from exotic courtesan to ordinary young woman with surprising rapidity. Without white face powder and dramatic eye paint, she appears younger and more vulnerable. Someone who might have originated from respectable family before circumstances directed her into pleasure establishments. She suggests changing clothes immediately. "These robes identify us as plainly as if we were carrying signs announcing our profession." The available clothing consists of simple Western-style dresses and Chinese peasant outfits, permitting better blending with Shanghai's working population. The transformation from silk and embroidery to plain cotton and wool represents far more than simple costume change. It's a step toward becoming someone different, someone with options beyond the limited possibilities of courtesan existence. As you help each other remove the elaborate robes and hairstyles that had defined your evening, the document you've been carrying falls to the floor. Jade Lotus stares at it curiously, noting the official seals and foreign writing, marking it as significantly more important than simple business correspondence. You pick up the paper carefully, understanding that this moment constitutes a crucial decision point. You could hide the document's significance, treating it as personal matter not involving your new companion. Or you could share the information, potentially gaining an ally but simultaneously creating complications that might endanger both of you. The document itself remains largely mysterious. The writing appears to be English, with sections possibly in German or another European language. Official seals suggest governmental authority. The secretive manner Harrison had handled it implies information that powerful people desperately want suppressed. You respond carefully, admitting it's something you took from a client's room. It might prove valuable or completely worthless. You won't understand which until finding someone capable of reading foreign writing. Jade Lotus nods thoughtfully, understanding the implications without requiring detailed explanation. In pleasure house worlds, information frequently proves more valuable than money, and documents bearing official seals represent tremendous opportunity for those clever enough to exploit them properly. She knows someone in the cafe downstairs who might help. a journalist from Paris who writes for several European newspapers. He's been investigating corruption in the foreign settlements, and he pays well for information supporting his stories. The suggestion offers both significant opportunity and genuine risk. A journalist might indeed translate the document and assess its importance, but journalists also publish information reaching dangerous people. If the document contains secrets that powerful individuals desperately want hidden, involving newspaper reporters could escalate the situation far beyond your capacity to control. But considering alternatives, you realize knowledge remains useless without understanding. The document represents potential freedom from debt and dependency, but only if you can determine what it actually contains and who might be willing to pay for that information. You should be careful, you finally say. If this paper is valuable enough to justify tonight's raids, it's dangerous enough to get us killed. Jade Lotus finishes changing into a plain cotton dress that transforms her appearance completely. Without elaborate styling marking her as a courtesan, she could be any young woman in Shanghai. A shop girl, factory worker, or domestic servant in foreign households. Part 5. Knowledge as Currency. The rain continues its steady drumming against the window, creating rhythm that masks street activity sounds below. Occasionally, voices or footsteps echo from the cafe beneath your room, reminding you that you're surrounded by people whose own displacement and survival stories have brought them to this temporary refuge. Jade Lotus speaks suddenly. She needs to tell you something. My real name isn't Jade Lotus, she confesses. It's Chen Wei Mei, and I wasn't always a courtesan. The revelation doesn't surprise you, since few women in pleasure houses had freely chosen their circumstances. Her willingness to share personal information suggests trust levels that could prove either valuable or dangerous, depending on what secrets she might eventually expect you to reveal. Her father was a silk merchant, not wealthy, but respectable. When his business failed and creditors seized everything, she was sold to pay his debts. That was 3 years ago. Her story echoes countless similar tales throughout Shanghai, where economic desperation and family obligations force young women into circumstances they never previously imagined possible. The collision between traditional Chinese social structures and rapid foreign influence changes creates situations where respectability vanishes overnight, and survival requires adaptations previous generations never considered. She asks what brought you to Mother Chen's establishment. The question forces you to confront strange gaps in your own memory, the sensation of existing in someone else's life without clear recollection of how you arrived there. The memories that feel most real involve recent months at the flower house. Earlier experiences remain frustratingly hazy, like trying to remember dreams after waking. You admit uncertainly that your memories before the flower house are genuinely unclear. Sometimes you think you remember a different existence, but you can't determine whether those constitute real memories or dreams created by opium's influence. Chen Wei Mei nods with understanding. The smoke affects everyone differently, she explains. Some girls say it helps them forget genuinely painful experiences. Others claim it shows them visions of lives they might have lived. The important thing is deciding who you want to become from now forward. Her words carry weight beyond surface meaning. In cities like Shanghai, where traditional identities collapse and reform constantly, Opportunities to reinvent yourself appear regularly for those bold enough to seize them. Tonight's chaos has created exactly such opportunity, a chance to step away from roles circumstances imposed and choose different paths forward. A soft knock interrupts your conversation. Madame Dubois enters, carrying a tray with tea and simple food, rice, vegetables, and modest fish portion representing luxury compared to the limited courtesan diet carefully controlling physical appearance. She advises eating quickly. The journalist she mentioned will be available to speak shortly, but only if you're genuinely interested in his services. He pays fairly for useful information, she continues, but he also asks probing questions some people prefer avoiding. The decision moment has arrived sooner than expected. You could spend the night resting and planning carefully in tomorrow's morning light. Or you could exploit immediate opportunity, risking exposure, but potentially gaining knowledge and resources needed to escape your situation entirely. Chen Wei Mei looks at you expectantly, clearly willing to follow your lead, but simultaneously making clear that the choice and its consequences will be primarily yours to carry. The document in your hands feels heavier than ever, pregnant with possibilities potentially leading to freedom or destruction, depending on how skillfully you navigate the following hours. Outside, official activity continues as patrols search through the night for whatever evidence or individuals they believe connect to the evening's mysterious incident. Time is working against you in ways you don't fully comprehend, but it's also creating opportunities that might disappear once normal city order is restored. You take a deep breath, tasting mixtures of tea, rain, and lingering opium smoke defining this strange night. Tomorrow, Shanghai will still be a city divided between competing authorities and conflicting loyalties. But tonight, in this small room above a French cafe, you have the chance to begin writing your own story, instead of simply surviving stories others have written for you. The journalist downstairs offers knowledge that could transform a stolen document into genuine freedom. Chen Wei Mei represents the possibility of alliance and shared risk in a world where isolation frequently means destruction. And somewhere beyond these walls in rainy Shanghai streets, consequences of your choices are already beginning to unfold in ways determining not just immediate survival, but your life's entire future trajectory. You smooth your simple cotton dress, which already feels more natural than silk robes ever did. You tell Chen Wei Mei that you should meet this journalist, but you'll only tell him what serves your purposes. She nods, understanding the delicate balance required. In Shanghai's complex web of competing interests, information flows like currency, but revealing too much can bankrupt you permanently. Madame Dubois leads you down a narrow back staircase emerging behind the cafe's main room. The journalist sits alone at a corner table, positioned to observe both the front entrance and the street beyond. He's younger than you expected, perhaps 30, with the pale complexion of someone spending more time with books than sunlight. His clothing marks him as European, but not wealthy, quality fabric showing signs of long wear and careful maintenance. He introduces himself as Henri Beaumont, a correspondent for Le Figaro and several other European publications. He acknowledges that Madame Dubois suggested you might have information relevant to tonight's unusual activities. You settle into chairs, allowing quick access to multiple exit routes. A precaution becomes second nature after months in pleasure houses. The cafe's other patrons continue their conversations, but you notice several glances in your direction, suggesting your presence has been registered and mentally cataloged. You reply carefully in English, testing his reaction to your language abilities. This might be true, you acknowledge, but first you need understanding what tonight's events actually involve. Beaumont's eyebrows rise slightly, clearly surprised by such directness from women dressed as working-class Chinese. You speak excellent English, he notes with apparent appreciation. Chen Wei Mei interjects smoothly, offering that your former entertainers whose recent circumstances have encouraged significant career changes. The journalist nods with understanding characteristic of someone who has learned not to probe too deeply into personal histories in cities like Shanghai. Then you'll appreciate accurate information's value, he responds. Tonight's raids result from Friedrich von Kellermann's murder, a German industrialist with significant pharmaceutical trade interests in Shanghai. The name carries no immediate meaning, but the mention of pharmaceuticals creates uncomfortable connection to Harrison's mysterious white powder. You maintain neutral expression while processing this information. Von Kellermann was discovered dead in his private office 3 hours ago, shot twice, his safe emptied, several important documents missing. The authorities believe the killer sought refuge in entertainment districts. What kind of documents, you ask, though you suspect you already carry part of the answer? Trade agreements, shipping manifests, correspondence with government officials. Von Kellermann was involved in importing chemicals for legitimate pharmaceutical manufacturing, Beaumont explains. But persistent rumors suggested side businesses involving less legal substances. The pieces begin forming clearer pictures: Harrison's strange powder, his official documents, his familiarity with escape procedures. He wasn't just a textile merchant amusing himself in pleasure houses. He was part of a network using legitimate business to mask illegal drug trafficking. Tonight, someone decided to eliminate a key player. Chen Wei Mei leans forward slightly, asking what such documents might be worth to someone who possessed them. It would depend entirely on their contents, Beaumont responds. Evidence of corruption could prove valuable to journalists or reform-minded officials. Proof of illegal activities might interest competitors. Details about supply networks could be worth fortunes to the right buyers. You reach into your dress and withdraw the document. Placing it on the table between you, would something like this qualify? The journalist's eyes widen as he recognizes the official seals and formal formatting. He examines the paper without touching it, clearly understanding that possession could be as dangerous as ignorance. After receiving your permission, he lifts the document to study it more closely. His expression grows increasingly serious as he reads, occasionally muttering French phrases under his breath. "This is a shipping manifest," he finally announces, "but not for textiles or conventional pharmaceuticals. These chemical names, morphine derivatives, cocaine compounds, synthetic substances he doesn't recognize. The quantities listed would supply Shanghai's entire illegal drug trade for months. Your heart pounds as the implications become crystal clear. You haven't stolen routine business correspondence. You've obtained evidence of industrial-scale drug manufacturing and distribution that could destroy powerful people and organizations throughout Shanghai's international community. The consignment described here was scheduled to arrive next week," Beaumont continues. But according to this manifest, it's already being pre-sold to buyers throughout Asia. Someone has built a distribution network extending from Shanghai to Hong Kong, Singapore, Manila, and beyond. The implications grow progressively more alarming as he continues his analysis. Chen Wei-mei grips your arm. How much would people pay to obtain this information or ensure it disappears forever? More than you could spend in several lifetimes, Beaumont replies grimly, but also enough to guarantee that everyone involved in taking it will be hunted until they're found. The cafe suddenly feels significantly less secure. Its warm lighting and civilized conversation seem insufficient protection against the magnitude of what you've stumbled into. Through rain-streaked windows, you can observe patrol lights moving with renewed intensity, suggesting that the search for von Kellerman's killer and missing documents has escalated dramatically. Who would want this information most, you ask, though you're already understanding the situation's terrible complexity? Beaumont outlines the possibilities with grim precision. Von Kellerman's competitors could use it to destroy his network and claim his territory. Government officials could use it to expose corruption or protect their own involvement. Foreign intelligence services could use it to influence Chinese policy or embarrass rival nations. Criminal organizations could use it to eliminate competition or expand their operations. Each possibility represents a different path forward, but different risks, potentially proving fatal if you misjudge them incorrectly. The document has transformed you from escaped courtesan to key player in conflicts involving international commerce, government corruption, and organized crime. There's something else, Beaumont adds, his voice dropping to barely above whisper. Von Kellerman wasn't working alone. His operation required protection from Chinese officials, cooperation from foreign authorities, and partnership with established criminal networks. Whoever killed him was either incredibly brave or incredibly well-connected. Possibly both, you think, remembering Harrison's confident escape, familiarity, and obvious terror when raids began. The British merchant had been part of von Kellerman's network, but tonight he became either a target or a betrayer. Chen Wei-mei asks the question you're both thinking, what happens to us now? That depends on what you want to achieve. Beaumont responds, I can offer several thousand yuan for exclusive story rights, enough to leave Shanghai and start new lives elsewhere, but publication would make you visible to everyone involved, both allies and enemies. The alternative remains unspoken, but obvious. Sell information directly to interested parties, potentially earning far more money, but accepting greater personal risk, or attempt to use the document as leverage for protection and position within whatever organization emerges from current chaos. Part 6. Escalation and Negotiation. A sudden commotion outside interrupts your discussion. Through cafe windows, you can see uniformed figures surrounding the building, their movements coordinated and purposefully systematic. The casual conversation throughout the establishment dies instantly as patrons recognize imminent raid indicators. Madame Dubois calls softly from behind the counter, her voice delivering urgent warning without creating panic. Back entrance, she announces, but as you start rising, Beaumont grabs your wrist. Wait, he instructs. Look at their uniforms carefully. You peer through rain-distorted glass, noting details escaping initial observation. These aren't the mixed patrol forces you'd encountered earlier. They're wearing distinctive insignia, of German commercial security, private guards employed by major trading companies protecting their interests. Von Kellermann's people, Beaumont breathes. They're not here to arrest anyone. They're here to recover stolen property and eliminate witnesses. The cafe's patrons begin moving toward exits with practiced efficiency of people having survived previous emergencies. Their movements lack panic that would attract additional attention from the street, suggesting this definitely isn't the first time Madame Dubois' establishment has faced official interest. You fold the document and secure it within your dress. The paper feels like it burns against your skin. Every choice now carries potentially fatal consequences, but inaction guarantees destruction. The men surrounding the building represent one faction in a complex struggle, but they're not the only players seeking what you possess. Is there another way out? Chen Wei-mei asks Madame Dubois, who nods toward a door behind the bar you hadn't previously noticed. Tunnel system, she replies. It connects to buildings throughout this district, but once you enter, you can't return here. Too dangerous for everyone. The decision point has arrived with brutal suddenness. You can attempt escape through underground passages that might lead to safety or might deliver you directly to other enemies. You can try negotiating with German security forces, hoping cooperation might earn mercy rather than elimination. Or you can gamble everything on Beaumont's offer, trusting a journalist's protection promise in exchange for information potentially reshaping Shanghai's criminal landscape. Outside, security forces begin moving toward building entrances. Their discipline and equipment suggest military training rather than simple corporate guards. These are professionals understanding urban warfare and possessing experience conducting operations in hostile territory. The cafe's warm atmosphere has transformed into something tense and desperate, conversations replaced by whispered consultations and quick farewells. Several patrons produce weapons from concealed locations, suggesting this refuge housed more dangerous individuals than civilized appearance indicated. Choose quickly, Beaumont urges. In 30 seconds, your options will be significantly reduced. Through back windows, you can see additional figures taking positions in the alley, cutting off seemingly obvious escape routes. The security operation is comprehensive and professionally executed, designed to prevent exactly the kind of flight you've been planning. Chen Wei-mei looks to you for guidance. Her trust is both touching and terrifying. Given the decision's magnitude, you take Chen Wei-mei's hand and move toward Madame Dubois' hidden door. You're carrying secrets that powerful people will kill to protect, and information that could free you from debts defining your existence. The tunnels ahead lead into darkness that might conceal salvation or destruction, but they represent the only path forward, not requiring surrender of your fate's control to others. Behind you, Beaumont gathers his papers with calm efficiency of someone accustomed to covering dangerous stories. Whether he'll survive to publish whatever account emerges from tonight's events remains uncertain, but his willingness to pay for information has confirmed what you're carrying's value. The hidden door opens onto stone steps descending into passages older than Shanghai's foreign settlements. Corridors have sheltered smugglers, revolutionaries, and refugees throughout the city's turbulent history. As you follow Chen Wei-mei into the underground maze, you carry more than stolen documents. You carry the possibility of writing your own story in a world never allowing women like you to hold the pen. The chase through Shanghai's hidden arteries is beginning. The stakes extend far beyond personal freedom to encompass international crime's future, government corruption, and the delicate power balance maintaining one of Asia's most important cities functioning. Every step forward takes you deeper into conflicts you barely understand, but also progressively closer to opportunities that could transform everything about the forced lives you've endured. The opium parlors and pleasure houses seem like distant memories now, replaced by immediate dangers demanding skills you never knew you possessed. But somewhere in the darkness ahead lies the possibility of becoming someone new, someone choosing her own risks and writing her own rules in a city built on dreams and nightmares of people seeking to escape their pasts. The underground passages stretch endlessly in multiple directions, a labyrinth of stone corridors predating Shanghai's modern transformation. Your footsteps echo softly against damp walls as you follow Chen Wei Mei through turns that seem random, but are apparently guided by markings only she understands. The air grows progressively thicker with each advancing step, carrying accumulated scents of river water, decay, and decades of hidden activities. These tunnels weren't built for foreign settlements above. They're remnants of old Shanghai, constructed when the city served different masters and harbored different fugitive types. Smugglers once used them to move opium inland from the docks. Revolutionaries hid weapons and planned uprisings in chambers carved from living rock. Now they shelter two women carrying information that could topple governments and destroy criminal empires. "Stay close," Chen Wei Mei whispers, pausing at an intersection where four passages converge. The tunnels connect to buildings throughout the quarter, but some lead to dead ends or flood chambers trapping the unwary. You press the document closer against your ribs, feeling its sharp edges through cotton dress. Above your heads, the search continues. Boots on floorboards, furniture being overturned, voices demanding answers that terrified people cannot provide. German security forces are thorough and systematic, but they're searching a world they don't fully understand. The passage begins sloping upward, and fresher air suggests approaching another exit point. But Chen Wei Mei suddenly freezes, raising her hand in a gesture making your blood run cold. Voices echo from ahead, not panicked conversations of other refugees, but calm professional tones of men conducting organized searches. "They're in the tunnels, too," she breathes, pressing against stone wall. "Multiple teams, coordinated search pattern. Someone gave them detailed maps. The implications strike like physical blows. This isn't hasty response to robbery and murder. It's a carefully planned operation that anticipated exactly the kind of escape you're attempting. Someone within Shanghai's underground networks has betrayed the tunnel system's secrets, or worse, the entire crisis has been orchestrated to flush out specific targets. You backtrack quickly, following Chen Wei Mei through passages growing progressively narrower and more treacherous. Water seeps through stone cracks, creating pools reflecting your lamp's flickering light in disturbing patterns. Temperature drops noticeably as you progress deeper underground, away from human habitation warmth into spaces that haven't experienced regular use in decades. "There's an old exit near the docks," Chen Wei Mei explains as you navigate around partially collapsed sections. "It leads to warehouses abandoned after the flooding 3 years ago. Not safe, but probably unwatched." The abandoned warehouses represent another gamble with potentially fatal consequences. Shanghai's drainage system was never designed to handle the city's rapid growth, and passages carrying storm water to the river are notorious for trapping people during weather events. Criminal organizations use such spaces for meetings and storage, making them potentially more dangerous than the tunnels you're fleeing. But as systematic searching sounds grow closer, alternatives become increasingly limited. The security forces have resources and coordination, suggesting backing from organizations far more powerful than a single murdered industrialist could command. You're not just fleeing von Kellerman's associates. You're running from a network including government officials, international intelligence services, and criminal syndicates working toward goals you can't comprehend. The tunnel ascends again, and running water sounds grow stronger. River proximity means you're approaching the Hangpu, where Shanghai's legitimate commerce mixes with activities existing in legal gray areas or beyond law entirely. The docks never sleep, providing constant cover for movement and transactions that couldn't survive daylight scrutiny. Chen Wei Mei stops at what appears to be a solid wall, but her hands find hidden mechanisms revealing another passage. This one displays clearly more recent construction. Modern tools have carved through ancient stone, creating a route connecting old tunnel systems to contemporary Shanghai's hidden infrastructure. Smuggler's Highway, she explains, built to move goods between the river and foreign settlements without customs inspection. If you reach the main branch, you can access any building in it in the commercial district. Part 7. The Underground Economy. The newer passage shows signs of regular use: worn stone where countless feet have passed, oil stains from lamps, even crude benches where people waited during busy periods. This represents active criminal infrastructure maintained and protected by organizations profiting from Shanghai's complex legal environment. But activity also means danger. These tunnels serve multiple criminal enterprises, and territorial disputes are resolved through violence rather than negotiation. 2 women carrying stolen documents would represent either valuable assets or dangerous competitors, depending on which organization controls the territory you're entering. A distant explosion shakes dust from the ceiling, followed by shouting echoing through stone corridors. The search above ground has escalated into something approaching urban warfare, suggesting multiple factions are now involved in recovering von Kellerman's missing materials. Faster, Chen Wei Mei urges, breaking into a run despite treacherous footing. If they're using explosives, nowhere in the quarter is genuinely safe. You follow her through passages seeming to stretch forever. Your simple cotton dress catches on rough stone protrusions, while your inadequate shoes slip on surfaces made treacherous by decades of moisture and accumulated use. The document against your ribs feels increasingly heavier with each step, as though the weight of its secrets is somehow increasing as more people die trying to recover it. The tunnel opens suddenly into a vast underground chamber that takes your breath away completely. Carved from solid rock, it's large enough to hold several buildings, with multiple levels connected by stone staircases and wooden walkways. Oil lamps and candles provide pools of light, revealing the space's current use as storage and distribution center for goods that can't bear official scrutiny. Crates and barrels line the walls, marked with symbols identifying their contents to those understanding the codes. Opium from interior provinces, manufactured goods from European factories, weapons from American suppliers. Stranger items suggesting markets you can't imagine. This represents the beating heart of Shanghai's shadow economy, where fortunes are made and lost beyond any government's taxation or regulation reach. But the chamber isn't empty of human presence. Figures move through shadows between storage areas, conducting business requiring privacy and security that legal venues cannot provide. Guards with weapons patrol the walkways, their alertness suggesting awareness that tonight's above-ground chaos could affect their operations below. Chen Wei Mei grabs your arm, pulling you into shadows behind tea chests, providing concealment while you assess the situation. The chamber's inhabitants haven't noticed your arrival yet, but crossing the space to reach exit passages requires passing through areas under active observation. Who are they? You whisper, watching armed figures move with military precision between storage areas. Green Gang, she replies, naming one of Shanghai's most powerful criminal organizations. They control most smuggling through this district. If they're here in force, something major is happening. Their involvement adds another complexity layer to your situation. They're not just criminals. They're a shadow government maintaining order in Shanghai's underworld through violence combination, corruption, and genuine community service in areas where official authority fails entirely. Their interest in tonight's events suggests connections extending far beyond simple drug trafficking. A commotion near one of the chamber's main entrances draws everyone's attention. New arrivals are entering the space, their voices carrying urgency of people bringing important news. You strain to hear their conversation, catching fragments making your blood freeze. Foreign devils everywhere above, one voice reports in Shanghai dialect. Military, police, private security, they're tearing apart every building in 3 districts. What are they looking for? Demands another voice carrying authority indicators of leadership. Papers taken from the German's office. Something about drug shipments, government agreements, money flowing to officials in Beijing and London. The conversation confirms your worst fears. The document you carry isn't just evidence of criminal activity. It's proof of corruption, reaching into the highest levels of multiple governments. No wonder the response has been so overwhelming and coordinated. You're carrying information that could destabilize the entire political and economic structure, keeping Shanghai functioning. Chen Wei Mei's grip on your arm tightens as more details emerge from the conversation across the chamber. The search above involves not just German security forces, but also British military units, Chinese government agents, and what sounds like representatives from several other foreign powers. Your theft has triggered an international incident that threatens to expose corruption networks spanning continents. We need to leave, she whispers urgently. If the Green Gang realizes what we're carrying, they'll either sell us to the highest bidder or eliminate us to prevent complications with their own operations. But crossing the chamber requires passing through areas where concealment becomes impossible. Part 8. The Price of Secrets. The walkways and staircases connecting different levels are well lit and constantly patrolled, making undetected movement virtually impossible for anyone not authorized to be in this space. The sound of approaching footsteps from the tunnel entrance behind you eliminates the retreat option. Multiple sets of boots echo through stone corridors, moving with systematic rhythm of organized search teams. You're trapped between criminal organizations that would exploit you and security forces that would eliminate you. You're carrying information, making you valuable enough to fight over and dangerous enough to kill. The chamber that seemed like potential salvation has become another trap, with exits controlled by people whose interests may not align with your survival. Chen Wei Mei studies the chamber's layout with desperate intensity, searching for options not requiring trust in organizations known for solving problems through violence. There, she points toward a section where water damage has created gaps in the stone walls. Flood channels that drain into the river during high water, she explains, dangerous, but probably unwatched. The flood channels represent another gamble with potentially fatal consequences. Shanghai's drainage system was never designed for the city's rapid growth, and passages carrying storm water to the river are notorious for trapping people during weather events. But they also provide routes bypassing controlled entrances and exits that criminal organizations monitor. The sound of boots in the tunnel behind you grows closer, accompanied by voices speaking in multiple languages, suggesting international cooperation in the search. Time has run out for careful consideration of alternatives. You must choose between known dangers and unknown risks, between capture certainty if you remain and survival possibility if you dare. The flood channels, Chen Wei Mei moves first, slipping through shadows toward the damaged section where water stains mark the entrance. You follow, clutching the document that has transformed you from escaped courtesan to international fugitive, carrying secrets that powerful people will kill to protect. The flood channel entrance barely accommodates a person's width. The smell of stagnant water and decay emerging from the opening suggests conditions that will test your endurance and resolve severely. But behind you, systematic searching sounds grow ever closer. Ahead lies Shanghai's hidden arteries' unknown darkness. As you slip through the gap into the flood channel, you hear explosions echoing from multiple directions above ground. The search for von Kellerman's missing documents has escalated into something approaching urban warfare with different factions using increasingly violent methods to secure what they believe you possess. The channel beyond is narrow and filled with water rising above your ankles, forcing single-file movement through darkness broken only by occasional light shafts from storm drains above. The water is cold and carries debris, making each step treacherous, while curved walls amplify every sound until your breathing seems loud enough to alert every searcher in Shanghai. But you're moving toward the river, toward possibilities that don't involve surrendering to organizations viewing human life as expendable. The document against your ribs feels like it's burning against your skin, a reminder that you now carry secrets that could prove invaluable or absolutely fatal. Chen Wei Mei navigates the flood channel with confidence born from necessity, following routes she's clearly used before during other emergencies. Her knowledge of Shanghai's hidden geography continues proving invaluable, providing alternatives to controlled spaces where criminal organizations and security forces expect to find their quarry. The channel slopes progressively more steeply as it approaches the river, and running water sounds grow stronger. Storm drains and sewage outlets create complex passage networks connecting every city district to the Hangpu, providing access routes bypassing all official checkpoints and commercial controls. But river proximity also brings new dangers. The dock districts operate under different rules than foreign settlements, with territorial disputes resolved through violence and competition eliminated through methods leaving no witnesses. Organizations controlling river access are older and more ruthless than criminal enterprises you've encountered so far. A light shaft ahead marks another storm drain opening, large enough to climb through if you can reach it. The opening provides street-level access, but also represents exposure to whatever forces are conducting the search above. Every choice continues balancing immediate risks against unknown consequences, with survival depending entirely on correctly guessing which dangers are manageable and which are absolutely fatal. Chen Wei-mei pauses at the storm drain's base, listening carefully for sounds indicating above-ground activity. The explosions have stopped, replaced by organized searching sounds suggesting one faction has established temporary area control. Quickly, she whispers, beginning to climb toward the opening above. The tide is turning, and these channels flood when the river rises. The climb through the storm drain requires careful navigation around metal grates and debris that could slice through clothing or flesh. Your simple cotton dress offers little protection against sharp edges, while your inadequate shoes make each foothold precarious. But the alternative, remaining in channels that will fill with water, makes the risks acceptable. You emerge into a Shanghai dawn bearing little resemblance to the city you'd known as a courtesan. Smoke rises from multiple locations throughout the foreign quarter, while military vehicles patrol streets normally filled with commercial traffic. The systematic search for von Kellermann's documents has transformed the international settlement into something approximating martial law. The document against your ribs feels heavier than ever as you survey the devastation your theft has triggered. Buildings show forced entry evidence, shattered windows, and the occasional dark street stain speaking of encounters between searchers and those who resisted too strongly. You're carrying information that has already cost dozens of lives, but also possessing the only leverage you have for negotiating survival in a city gone mad. Chen Wei-mei surveys the scene with grim understanding. The entire power balance has shifted, she observes. Whatever that document contains, it's worth more than money to these people. The dawn light reveals details hidden by darkness and rain. Foreign military units patrol alongside Chinese officials, suggesting cooperation between governments that are normally rivals. Private security forces bearing different corporate insignia work together with coordination indicating prearranged agreements. The search for von Kellermann's documents has united interests that are usually competitive or hostile. But unity among your enemies also creates opportunities for those clever enough to exploit the cracks in temporary alliances. Different organizations have different priorities, and what appears to be cooperation could quickly dissolve into competition if stakes change or new information emerges. The document you carry might be key to playing these factions against each other rather than simply fleeing from all of them. A patrol approaches your position, forcing you to take cover behind abandoned market stalls lining the street. The soldiers wear mixed uniforms, suggesting units drawn from multiple foreign powers working under temporary command structures created specifically for tonight's operation. Their discipline and coordination indicate professional military training, not the casual brutality of criminal enforcers. As they pass, you catch conversation fragments confirming your suspicions about the document's significance. References to Beijing connections, London banking records, and American pharmaceutical partnerships suggest corruption networks spanning continents and involving the highest levels of international commerce and government. The patrol moves on, continuing their systematic search of every building and potential hiding place. But their passage has revealed something, making your heart race with possibility rather than fear. One soldier carried dispatch cases bearing diplomatic seals, suggesting that official communications are being used to coordinate the search operation. Part 9. The Web of Corruption. Did you see the diplomatic pouches? Chen Wei-mei asks, her voice carrying excitement. Multiple governments working together, you confirm, which means multiple competing interests that we might be able to exploit. The realization transforms your situation's understanding. You're not just carrying evidence of criminal activity. You're possessing proof of international corruption threatening legitimate governments as well as criminal organizations. Different countries have different reasons for wanting the information either suppressed or revealed, creating negotiation opportunities rather than simple flight. But exploiting such opportunities requires understanding exactly what the document contains and which revelations would be most valuable to which parties. The dawned light provides your first real opportunity to examine the papers carefully and decode the secrets that have transformed you from escaped courtesan into international fugitive. Chen Wei-mei finds a sheltered doorway where you can examine the document without exposure to passing patrols. The morning sun illuminates details that had been impossible to read by lamplight, revealing information explaining the massive response your theft has triggered. The papers contain far more than shipping manifests and drug distribution networks. They document financial transfers between European pharmaceutical companies and Chinese officials, detailing corruption reaching into the imperial court itself. American banking records show money laundering operations funding both legitimate businesses and criminal enterprises throughout Asia. British military reports describe cooperation with drug smugglers in exchange for intelligence about anti-colonial activities. This isn't just about drugs, Chen Wei-mei breathes as the corruption scope becomes clear. This is about the entire system that keeps the foreign settlements functioning. The document reveals that Shanghai's apparent chaos is actually carefully managed chaos, with criminal organizations serving as unofficial government extensions and intelligence agencies. The drug trade provides funding for operations that can't be supported through official channels, while corruption ensures that Chinese officials cooperate with foreign business interests benefiting their home countries. Your theft hasn't just disrupted criminal activity. It's threatened to expose the shadow agreements allowing multiple foreign powers to exploit Chinese resources while maintaining the fiction of legitimate commerce and diplomatic relations. No wonder the response has been so overwhelming and coordinated. You're carrying evidence that could destroy the entire colonial system in China. But such valuable information also provides unprecedented leverage for someone clever enough to use it properly. Different governments would pay enormous sums to obtain evidence of rival corruption, while also paying equally large amounts to prevent their own activities from being exposed. The document makes you potentially valuable to everyone and threatening to everyone simultaneously. The sound of approaching aircraft adds a new dimension to the morning's chaos. Military planes circle overhead, their presence indicating that the search operation has expanded beyond ground forces to include aerial surveillance and potentially airstrikes if the situation escalates further. The stakes have risen beyond anything you could have imagined when you first took those papers from Harrison's room. Chen Wei Mei grabs your arm as she spots movement in the distance that makes her face go pale. "Foreign warships," she says, pointing toward the river where naval vessels are taking positions that would allow them to control all traffic in and out of Shanghai's harbor. The implications are staggering. Multiple foreign navies have coordinated to blockade Shanghai, preventing anyone from leaving the city with information that could compromise their interests. You're not just trapped in a building or district. You're imprisoned in an entire city that has been sealed by international military force. But warships also mean that whatever you're carrying is valuable enough to justify risking war between major powers. The document has become more than evidence of corruption. It's a strategic asset that could shift the balance of power throughout Asia if it falls into the wrong hands. The morning sun climbs higher, revealing a Shanghai transformed by a single night's chaos into something resembling a genuine war zone. The city, where you had lived as a courtesan, trapped by debt and dependency, has become a prison where escape requires navigating international conspiracies and military operations spanning continents. But you're no longer the powerless woman who had awakened in that opium-scented room. You carry secrets that governments and criminal organizations will kill to obtain or suppress. Information that makes you one of the most important people in Shanghai, despite your humble origins and recent circumstances. The document against your ribs pulses with possibilities extending far beyond personal freedom to encompass the future of international relations in Asia. Every choice you make from this moment forward will influence not just your own survival, but the balance of power between empires that see China as territory to be exploited rather than a nation to be respected. Chen Wei Mei looks to you for guidance. Her trust is both touching and terrifying, given the decisions now required. The sun continues rising over a city in chaos, while in the distance, warships and aircraft ensure that whatever resolution emerges from this crisis will be determined by those bold enough to seize control of information that could reshape the world. The teenage courtesan, who once depended on others for every survival aspect, now holds the power to influence nations' fates. The opium dreams that once provided escape from powerless reality have been replaced by waking possibilities that are both more dangerous and more liberating than anything chemical enhancement could have provided. Your story is no longer being written by others who see you as property to be bought and sold. You hold the pen now, and the next chapters will be determined by choices that only you can make in a world transformed by secrets that only you possess. Continued in next section due to length. The morning air carries acrid gunpowder and burning wood smells as you and Chen Wei Mei navigate through Shanghai's transformed streets. Each block reveals new violence evidence, overturned carriages, shattered windows, and the occasional dark stains on cobblestones, speaking of encounters between searchers and those who resisted excessively. The document sewn into your dress lining feels like it's radiating heat, a constant reminder of the power you now carry. But power without a plan is merely danger. And as the sun climbs higher, you realize that survival requires more than just avoiding capture. You need understanding the game being played around you and finding ways to emerge as a player rather than merely a prize. Chen Wei Mei guides you through side street mazes toward what she identifies as the neutral zone, a district where competing foreign interests have created an unofficial buffer area where violence is discouraged by mutual agreement. It's not genuinely safe, but it's a place where negotiations might become possible without immediate assassination threats. The buildings here display different architectural character, mixing Chinese traditional elements with European commercial designs in ways creating something entirely new. This is where Shanghai's transformation becomes most visible, where East meets West, not in exploitative relationships of the settlements, but in genuine collaboration between merchants and artisans profiting from cultural exchange. A tea house occupies the ground floor of a building combining German engineering with Chinese aesthetics. Its wide windows permit observation of the street, while multiple exits provide escape routes if negotiations turn dangerous. The proprietor, an elderly Chinese man in European clothes and traditional queue, nods recognition to Chen Wei Mei with familiarity suggesting she sought sanctuary here previously. He speaks simply in Mandarin, gesturing toward a staircase leading to private dining areas. "Upstairs room," he announces. "No questions, no names, no problems unless you bring them." The room he provides overlooks the street through lattice windows, allowing observation without being observed. A low table holds tea service and simple food, while cushions provide comfortable seating for conversations that might continue for hours. Most importantly, the room has 3 different exits, including one connecting to the neighboring building through a shared wall. As you settle into this temporary refuge, the situation's full scope becomes increasingly apparent. The document you carry contains information threatening not just individual criminals or corrupt officials, but the entire system of international relationships defining modern Shanghai. The pharmaceutical networks, banking arrangements, and political agreements detailed in von Kellermann's papers reveal how foreign powers maintain control over Chinese territory through methods that would scandalize home populations if exposed. But exposure would also destroy economic relationships, supporting thousands of families throughout Shanghai. Suppressing the information might enable continued exploitation, but it would also preserve stability, benefiting communities with little involvement in criminal activities. The ethical complexity grows as Chen Wei Mei voices the question, expanding in your mind throughout the morning's revelations. Is there a path that serves justice without destroying innocent people's livelihoods? The tea house proprietor brings fresh supplies, clean clothes that will make you less conspicuous, basic medical supplies for treating the cuts and bruises accumulated during your underground escape, and most importantly, writing materials allowing you to create copies of the crucial document. Multiple copies mean you can negotiate with different parties simultaneously, playing them against each other, rather than simply selling to the highest bidder. As you work to transcribe the most important sections of von Kellermann's papers, your position's complexity becomes even more apparent. The information could be used to destroy foreign influence in Shanghai, but it could also strengthen that influence by eliminating competitors and consolidating control. Different document portions would be valuable to different parties for completely opposite reasons. The British sections detail cooperation with American businesses violating trade agreements with London. American intelligence services would pay handsomely for evidence that could embarrass their British counterparts, while British authorities would pay equally well to suppress such information. The Chinese portions reveal which officials have been compromised, information that reform-minded Beijing elements would find invaluable, but that corrupt officials would kill to suppress. Chen Wei-mei helps organize the copied materials into separate packets that could be used for different negotiating purposes. We could sell different pieces to different buyers, she suggests, playing each faction's interests against the others, while keeping the complete picture for ourselves as insurance. The strategy has merit, but it also requires sophisticated understanding of international politics and criminal networks extending far beyond your experience as courtesans. Misjudging any party's priorities or capabilities could result in betrayal, elimination, or worse, being caught between competing factions when their temporary cooperation dissolves into open conflict. But as you consider the alternatives, you realize that knowledge remains useless without understanding. The document represents potential freedom from debt and dependency, but only if you can determine what it actually contains and who might be willing to pay for that information. The afternoon light grows longer as you realize that sanctuary, however temporary, provides the first opportunity to truly examine the full scope of what you've stolen. The monk brings rice paper and ink, understanding without explanation that transcription might be necessary for whatever negotiations lie ahead. As you spread von Kellermann's documents across the low table, the afternoon light reveals details that lamplight and urgency had previously obscured. The pharmaceutical shipping manifests contain more than just drug quantities and destinations. They list specific chemical formulations that don't match any legitimate medical compounds you've heard discussed among the Flower House clientele, who often spoke of their various remedies and treatments. Chen Wei-mei peers over your shoulder as you trace your finger along columns of numbers that seem to follow patterns more complex than simple commercial transactions. These aren't just purchase orders, she observes. Look at the timing. Every shipment coordinates with specific dates when government officials travel between cities. The correlation becomes impossible to ignore once she points it out. Chemical deliveries arrive in Hong Kong exactly when British colonial administrators visit from London. American pharmaceutical shipments reach Manila precisely during congressional fact-finding missions. German compounds enter Shanghai during diplomatic conferences between European powers and Chinese imperial representatives. They're not just bribing officials you breathe, understanding flooding through you like cold water. They're dosing them. The implications stagger you as the conspiracy's true scope becomes apparent. The corruption documented in these papers isn't just financial. It's pharmaceutical manipulation of government officials whose decisions affect millions of lives throughout Asia. Trade agreements, territorial concessions, military cooperation arrangements, all potentially influenced by chemical compounds administered without the official's knowledge. Chen Wei-mei's face goes pale as she traces similar patterns in other document sections. The flower houses, she whispers, the special clients who receive private audiences with specific courtesans known for their discretion. Your blood freezes as her words connect dots you hadn't wanted to see. The House of Golden Butterflies hadn't just been an entertainment establishment. It had been a laboratory where foreign officials were exposed to chemical influences during moments of physical and emotional vulnerability. The elaborate tea ceremonies, the carefully prepared opium, the incense that seemed unusually potent, all of it had been cover for pharmaceutical manipulation designed to make powerful men more susceptible to suggestion and less capable of critical analysis. The document reveals that Mother Chen hadn't just been managing courtesans. She'd been administering a systematic program of chemical influence targeting specific officials whose decisions could benefit particular business interests. The girls hadn't just been entertainers. They'd been unwitting participants in espionage operations using intimate relationships to facilitate pharmaceutical manipulation of men whose choices affected international commerce and political relationships. How many of us were involved without knowing? Chen Wei-mei asks, her voice carrying the horror of someone realizing she'd been used for purposes far more sinister than simple sexual entertainment. The paper suggests that the program extended throughout Shanghai's entertainment districts, with different establishments targeting officials from different countries and interests. British officials frequented houses using compounds designed to increase their receptivity to German business proposals. American businessmen were directed toward establishments using chemicals favoring French commercial interests. Chinese officials were entertained at locations where pharmaceutical manipulation supported whatever foreign power had paid for access during specific negotiation periods. The systematic nature of the operation reveals planning and coordination extending far beyond criminal enterprise into something approaching chemical warfare conducted through commercial and diplomatic channels. Von Kellerman hadn't just been manufacturing drugs for recreational use. He'd been producing compounds specifically designed to influence decision-making processes of government officials whose choices determined entire populations' fates. Final section follows. Your journey began with waking up trapped in silk and smoke, dependent on others for every aspect of survival. Now you carry documents that could reshape international relationships in Asia. The teenage girl who entered this world with nothing but intelligence and desperation has become a woman whose choices will influence history's course. The question now is whether you can navigate the final negotiation skillfully enough to secure not just survival, but the kind of freedom allowing you to write your own story in a world never permitting women like you to hold the pen. The representatives wait below, each carrying offers that could provide security or destruction, depending on how accurately you assess their true intentions and capabilities. The documents in your possession pulse with possibilities extending far beyond personal liberation to encompass questions about justice, power, and the price societies pay when prosperity depends on systematic deception and exploitation. Evening approaches over a Shanghai that will never be quite the same after tonight's revelations. While in a Buddhist temple dedicated to mercy and enlightenment, a former courtesan prepares to negotiate with empires whose collision has created both opportunities and tragedies, defining modern Asia. The collision continues, but for the first time, you're positioned to influence its direction, rather than simply survive its consequences. As the temple bells fade into Shanghai's evening air, you realize your journey from powerless courtesan to international negotiator represents more than just personal transformation. You've witnessed how easily entire societies can be built on hidden foundations of manipulation and control, where people making decisions about millions of lives might be unknowingly influenced by chemicals designed to serve interests they never agreed to support. Every courtesan, every client, every carefully prepared cup of tea had been part of a system turning personal weakness into geopolitical advantage. But perhaps most importantly, your story demonstrates that even in the most oppressive circumstances, individuals can find ways to seize control of their own narratives. The teenage girl who woke up trapped in silk and smoke discovered that intelligence, courage, and strategic thinking could transform her from victim into someone capable of influencing the very forces that sought to control her. Shanghai's foreign settlements will continue operating. Its criminal networks will adapt and evolve, and powerful men will keep making deals that benefit some while exploiting others. But tonight, in a Buddhist temple where mercy meets pragmatism, one woman proved that even the most carefully constructed systems of power and control can be challenged by those brave enough to steal the right secrets at precisely the right moment. The opium dreams that once offered escape from reality have been replaced by something far more intoxicating. The possibility of writing your own story in a world that never intended to give you the pen.